Hello everybody. I hope that this video gets to you in a time of health and hopefully progress. This would be the last video lecture of this semester. So let's get started. Chapter 14 is social movements. So social movement, let me start again. Social movements preceded social work in terms of, we didn't have social work as we have today, or, many years ago. It was, social movements were mainly organized by, some religious groups and some other, type of group, maybe, rich women who wanted to, help, children and families. Remember that at the time, most women didn't have a career, so they found themselves, being quote unquote social workers before social work was actually established. So, social movement have been part of our society for a long time, for labor issues, women issues, civil rights issues, welfare issues, peace, or, not getting into conflicts, Vietnam, Middle East, etc. So we have a lot of examples, and more recently we have the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, we besides that, and I guess it would go hand by hand. Getting a movement to get rid of the present administration, because issues of racism, immigration, and preference to the rich as opposed to the less fortunate, and so on. So let me just start, as you have here in your screen, by a definition. So ongoing large-scale collective efforts to bring about or resist social change. We have, by the way, you can have a movement, a social movement that is progressive, which is the one that most social workers would be behind. And then we have social movements that are conservative, right? So, not all social movement, you can argue, I guess from your perspective or my perspective, that are to promote positive change. Of course, the definition of positive change is, it depends on the eye of the beholder. Proactive social movement seek to reform existing social arrangement and try out new ways of cooperating and living together, right? Like the civil rights movement, obviously Black Lives Matter, and so on. Reactive social movement seek to defend traditional values and social arrangement. So that's more like the more conservative, as I was saying, and the proactive would be the more progressive. I suggest a video which you have the URL here. next slide. Properties that distinguish social movement from other social collectives. For instance, before the chapters, we talk about communities, formal organizations, etc., right? So what is social movement different from those? So, conflictual relation with in identify opponents. Again, Black Lives Matters, right? Well, the policy, police policy on, on excessive force, on, bias, entering an apartment or a house without a warrant, or even announcing themselves, all of those things, right? Linked by dense informal networks. Well, yeah, I mean, the same example. And also, in the last, almost 30 years, we had the, not the internet. The internet is a little older than that, but we had, the World Wide Web, which, maybe, 25 years been really, really active. And so we have all those connections that, people from far away can, post a video or share an experience or cooperate or donate funds, right? Share a distinctive collective identity. Well, yes, regardless, we've seen again the Black Lives Matter and other similar movements, from back in the civil rights era, that, it was, quite a diverse group. People feel like there's an injustice, then, it shouldn't matter the race or ethnicity, but so social movement and the history of social work. So I was saying, social movement precede, social work. So one of, maybe this is the 19th century, we have charity organizations, societies, and, they were developed by private charity, they focus on, when I say the individual pathology, means, problem with, poverty, problem with health, etc. Settlement houses, we've seen, you probably heard of those, Hull House in Chicago. It's a famous one, which, provided, living conditions and some other aids to people, especially those who were moving from, more rural areas to, to industrialize or cities, and they were facing problems, with how am I going to survive, and, they needed, maybe they have the proper skills, or, because they were more on the, agrarian society, farming, etc., and they needed to get themselves acclimated. So there's this, plus, you see, you have this sort of image of the poor person or family, moving to a big city, and, they're going to struggle. So we have those settlement houses, and we have, then, some of them sort of had, women who were of a certain strata, social strata, like I was saying before, who, because of the time, we're talking 19th century, they didn't have a career, so they started acting like social workers. Now, they weren't really social workers, and we didn't have a training or a school or a college that, at that time, that produce or educate people on social work. But as you can imagine, things move from there. So we have several perspectives on social movement, or several theory. Strain theory. Well, what do you think about when you hear the word strain, right? Difficulties, things that, oppress or constrain, the development, the health, the liberty of individuals, right? Families, communities, etc. So, continuing the story on strain theory, let's think about, what would happen if, everything, in terms of social institutions were, calm and stable, right? Well, there wouldn't be any movement, right? There wouldn't be any collective action, right? So when there's strain, then it weakens that stability. And let me say that it doesn't have to necessarily be good. Maybe maybe there's like the white supremacists, right? They think that, or on the opposite end, the Black life matters, right? Not that we were before any instance, stable. I'm saying that to ease with the definition, right? So there's something that, sort of shakes the system, and it could be, could be riots, it could be, even to the extreme of, revolutions, but, it could be just peaceful protests, and, people, sort of, as the protest, it gains momentum and so on. I think, that's I think an easy way to, understand what strain theory is. Political process perspective. So here's another, theory of the way, and another way to view social movements. So there's certain assumptions, like social institution benefits the elites and disadvantage other. Well, social institution, we talked about those earlier in the semester. Probably not so long ago. And the 1%ers and maybe even the 2%ers benefit from social institutions. When you talk about almost anything, well, you remember some of the social institutions. There's so many. Elites have routine access to institutionalized political channels, connections, right? Their networks. Well, in terms of social institution, we have, like a political party or a PAC, that, collects money for a certain candidate, etc. Power disparities make it difficult for some groups to successfully challenge existing institutions. It's not until like we're seeing now that when we rise up and it starts showing up at the state capitol, at the White House in D.C., which with massive amount of individuals and with a unique voice, that maybe that's when politicians and the people with power say, I better change my vote. Sometimes they don't, right? Sometimes they make a compromise, and which it seems like a good thing, but maybe not so. Institutions are sometimes more vulnerable to change by group with little power. Well, you seen that. That's what I was saying before, that I don't think by any means, not that they have not accomplished quite a lot, but like Black Lives Matter, probably have been responsible for some changes, but we're not there, right? Social movement can take advantage of institutional arrangements that are vulnerable to change. Especially when they for instance, it's just an example, those chokes, the knee on the neck, from those restraining policies and techniques, right? They don't make sense, right? And other ones. So, you may be, it's almost like, and this is coming from me, so don't generalize it, but it's almost like we try to chip away from the most vulnerable part of the policies, for instance. Again, this is just an example for me. So, the idea, maybe defunding the police was too much of a big idea, even though it was never about really defunding the police. It was to move funds to more, community-based and social, other, social promoting initiatives, right? But it's almost like we are a good virus entering to that sort of individual, which is the organization, and we latch to the weakest part, right? So it's not, we've seen that, right? Even in the women's right to vote, or in the civil rights movement, it was basic human rights, right? So, even though there were a lot of people against it, the argument against it was that, well, they're not really, they're only what was it, 3/5 human, or the women are women, and whatever. So it's a weak argument. I know that was the law of the land for many years long ago, but you can see that some arguments just fall flat, and don't make a lot of sense. So you don't have to necessarily tackle the big issues. It's like little by little you can, what's that? Never mind. There's this story. I think it's a Chinese story that of the little miner with picking away on the mountains, and little by little, and the mountain was gone. So political process perspective. This is we're continuing this discussion. So we have openness of the political system, so ability of political argument, ability of elite allies, international relations. I'm already on 20 minutes, so I'm gonna speed up since I sort of laid the basics of the chapter already. Use the time to complete reading the slide. Yes, we due to we weren't alone. Other countries, you saw how when Biden won, there were celebrations worldwide. Key ideas for political process perspective. Social movement often rely on elite allies. Yes. You can go through those. The mobilizing structure perspective. Social movement leader must seek out and mobilize needed resources, people, ideas, information now with the internet, and Zoom and other media activities. We have on our phones, we can watch, speeches and donate. And so, we're talking about social movement. So the mobilization, the movement, the growth, right? Either financially or in numbers, depends on, how well people know, how well they're organized, and so on. So we have the key ideas for mobilizing structure perspective. So you can mobilize formal and informal. You all heard ideas like that. Networks, through formal and informal network. If you wanted to grow and to still survive, social movements need to be able to add more people, right? Yes, we do need, we don't, with the internet and having people show up in a certain place, maybe that won't necessarily, be expensive, but, the more money, and people, for instance, create signs by themselves, and they're very creative. So, maybe, funding, it's not needed sometimes, but it does, it's required, especially now, which even, because there's two sides of the internet. Maybe there's a lot of things that are free, but, there's a lot of things that are not free. I'm just going to keep moving since I'm already over my time, even though, like I said many times, it's hard to just keep this lecture to 20 minutes. The chapters are long. So select history and development of new information communication technology. Right. With even back in the 19th century, we have the telegraph. Now, yes, that it costs money. People obviously, it would be, if you receive a telegraph, you need to be able to read, and that wasn't everybody at the time. The telephone, not everybody could afford a telephone, but then, things keep progressing. That I'm not going to say that we're all equal now, because there's a digital or cyber divide. You know, a lot of us, not that we didn't know, but have, face issues with, now with teaching, online. There's, at least all of you are adults, right? And you have some resources and so on, and you cannot, well, if you're in school, you can't afford to be in school, and maybe you have some services, but, there's a lot of individuals, and I'm not saying that you don't have issues, because we all do, in terms of technology and internet, but, there's a lot of still divide children who, don't have access to the internet, or their parents or work. And how are they going to, now with the pandemic, how they get education, So there's still a gap, digitally, and it have not been, from my perspective, it have not been so obvious until now. Again, those are my words. Maybe this social, I'm sorry, not social, digital divide have been there for a long time, but I think now it's right in our faces, so to speak, our reality. Just gonna keep going, because we have some other areas like the cultural framing perspective. So, you have the, when people get together, right? You have the, the understanding and and sort of the way things are in a certain situation. Again, police brutality and Black Lives Matters. They all have the shared understanding, and even though it's hard not to see that violence and brutality was committed unfairly, obviously, it still needs to be said, and create the consciousness, right? And a strategic effort to share this understanding. People argue that if it wasn't for phones, and having videos, we all know that that's gonna, maybe it wasn't for most of us. I should say, we didn't need to see a video, right? But it increases the sort of collective consciousness, right? And so on. Things cannot be so random, right? So when, and they're not in cases like, police brutality, but, maybe it's the culture of that particular institution, right? That, not allows, so to speak, those kind of behaviors. So, like I said, not all social movements have to be proactive, right? So maybe, conservative, let the things be as they were. Key ideas for cultural framing perspective. I already mentioned that. First one, yes, you need to be able to sort of vocalize, or articulate, what are the issues that you're against, or for that matter, in favor of. Articulate goals, contests over cultural frames are common in social movement. Yeah, I mean, if we go back to, women's liberation movement, or even the gay, lesbian, and so on movement, and I'm saying back in the 60s, 70s, etc., for the gay movement, it was, we had the cultural frame that, it's Adam and Eve and not Adam and Steve. Obviously that was the sort of the way. Now the new cultural frame, so to speak, would be that, you should be, love is love, and whoever you find yourself falling in love, it doesn't really matter, right? Or what do you call yourself, or what do you identify yourself, right? Talking gender-wise or sexual preference-wise. Social movement must be able to create cultural frame to appeal to a diverse audience. Well, yeah, that's what I am trying to say. How do you may promote, equality, by oppressing people, you make them less productive, and, if you, promote education and and less barriers, we all benefit, right? So, that's just an idea, right? We all are better together than apart, and, etc. Yes, metaphor symbols, that, yes we can, or si se puede. Actually, the yes we can came from the Chicano movement, and, it was borrowed by Obama. Nobody's complaining from yes we can, but, some other, metaphors and symbols and slogans and so on. Just gonna move because we still have some other perspective. Emerging perspective. Look at the role emotions in motivating people to participate in social movement activities. So, they're emerging. You got to sort of like a snowball effect that is increasing, gaining not only momentum but size, right? So intensity, duration, and motivation for participating by different members. Yes, it changes. Some people, got involved in a little bit, and then they it changes. It's maybe almost like a exponential gains. Social movement outcomes. There's nothing too complicated about this. Over time, community, cumulatively, gaining different perspective. Social movement trends. There's been, many, in the last, forever for that matter, but as long as we have people oppressed and were able to speak out in some way, and, yes, some people were hurt, and people even died for, trying to express their, ideology, and, defend the rights of them and their family. I'm way over my time. I let you, I'm almost went to the bottom and the end of the chapter. So, I let you read and go over. Like I have said before, I believe, they're not the most updated thing, but the podcasts that are available you see in the model for every chapter, they're pretty good. You just have to, they're gonna talk. I think I know that the one for this chapter talks about 2011, which is it's a few years back. But I think you would recognize the social movement that they're talking about. You just have to change it to some that are more current to use. Again, please do not forget to do. I think it's gonna be. Actually, I think it's open right now. Do the SIRS, which is the student, evaluation of yours truly, which is, remember, you get 15 points if you complete it. So remember that when you complete the SIRS survey, or maybe I shouldn't say survey because the last S is survey. If you sort of skip, when you get that screen that says you're done, don't do anything else to get out of it. Make sure that you print that page either by, some people take a picture, some people, do whatever other things. But, excuse me, an easy way is to do the control print screen and then, paste it somewhere else and then upload that. And, once I see that you completed it, you need to, do all the questions to get the so-called verification. But, so be aware that printing it is not as simple that once you get out of that page that says tells you that you completed it, you won't be able to come back. All right. Stay healthy. Stay safe. God bless.